Hardesty. Wheeler.
Here, under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by video teleconference, and the city's made several avenues available for the public to participate in the broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGovPDX, www.portlandoregon.gov/video, and channel 30. The public may provide written testimony to the council by emailing the council clerk at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your continued patience, your flexibility, and your understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to conduct the city's business. With that, we'll hear from legal counsel on the rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to speak briefly about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while the City Council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded.
Thanks, Ann. And I just got to say again, your medal collection puts mine to shame. I'm going to have to really up my game.
Thank you.
Thank you. First up is communications. Keelan, first individual, please, item 761.
Request of Kate Merrill to address council regarding safety in Central East Side.
Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kate Merrill, and I'm the Executive Director for the Business Association for Portland Central East Side Industrial Council, and our Enhanced Services District, Central East Side together. It's been more than 2 years since we came to Council for the formation of our Enhanced Services District. We started district-wide in October of 2019. In 2020, 2021, our teams have responded to over 5,000 safety and cleaning dispatches, and our Safety for All teams have had over 30,000 interactions with businesses, visitors, and residents, housed and unhoused. We've started peer work programs for unhoused to clean trash off of our sidewalks and roadways and to restore our bioswales. And we've been offering crucial aid to unhoused by connecting them with medical and mental health appointments, hygiene supplies, food and clothing, shelter and housing lists, IDs, and more. We are seeing a steady increase in the demand for our safety services, both from housed and unhoused, and have increased our safety hours to almost 24-hour coverage. Despite our successes, we are facing significant challenges. In August and September, we had 10 fires reported to us that were suspected arsons, mostly the burning of people's camps. Our unarmed safety teams have been witnessing increased violence on our streets, and getting emergency mental health crisis response has been very difficult. I'm bringing 2 well-loved Portland manufacturers based in our district and a member of our Safety for All team to share their stories and to propose solutions. We need immediate actions in these areas, improvements to the 911 system, making sure that we can have as robust a plan as possible to support the 311 line development for non-emergency response, the immediate expansion of Portland's street response, and temporary fixes to alleviate the stress on the streets while this is being built. We know from our own experience that expansion of safety services can take time. the quick hiring of more unarmed administrative police officers, PS3s, to let police get to solving crimes and to create new employment pathways for a diverse police force. An increase of the fire arson investigations unit. I've been told that all unit investigators are currently overwhelmed with caseloads. An increase of the police behavioral health unit and the service coordination team to offer pipeline for individuals wanting to get into recovery programs. And more shelter types. Our Safety for All team has many partnerships with social service providers, and yet we are still unable to quickly get people into shelter and services, which our Safety for All presenter will address in his testimony. It's going to take the help of our entire community to get us out of this housing crisis. Let's make sure we can all contribute. We thank you for your time today and for listening to our urgent call for help to make our city for all safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We appreciate it. Next up, 762. Next individual, please, Keelan.
Request of Lindsay Crawford to address council regarding safety in Central East Side.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great. Good morning, Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Lindsay Crawford, and I'm joining you from Stumptown Coffee Roasters, where I've served as the head of HR for 4 years. Our HQ and main roastery is located in the CEID at 100 Southeast Salmon. Additionally, we have a cold brew brewery located at 1311 Southeast 9th. As you may be aware, we also have 4 cafes within Portland, 2 in Southeast and 2 in downtown. On behalf of the CEIC and on behalf of the employees at Stumptown, I urge you to take immediate action to make our city safer for our businesses and our employees. I'd like to share with you a little more about my experience and the experience of my coworkers to provide context as to the urgency of my ask for all of you. Stumptown employs 140 individuals in Portland, and 110 of those roles are based in the CEID. Stumptown was founded in 1999, and our city is an interwoven part of our identity, even down to our name. We moved our HQ and roastery from its original location on Southeast Division to the CEID 1 decade ago, because it was the perfect place for us to grow and expand in a neighborhood that reflected much of what we care about: a community of creators, a vibrant food and maker scene, and quite frankly, a slightly rough around the edges realness that we love about our city. It has depth and soul. All of what I said still remains, and the Central East Side is our home. However, our enthusiasm and emotional connection to the neighborhood continues to get dampened due to the very real costs and consequences of the growing safety concerns within the district. Over the last year in particular, the frequency of concerns has increased at a pace that we can't keep up with. Our fleet of delivery vans regularly gets vandalized, with gas tanks drilled and catalytic converters sawed off. Employee vehicles have been broken into in broad daylight while parked in our parking lot. Both our HQ and our cold brew brewery have been broken into and burgled. Our employees are scared. These are frontline workers that have already navigated the weight and risks of continuing to come to work through the entirety of the pandemic. Our teams have witnessed the effects of the mental health and addiction crises impacting our streets and regularly view truly unbelievable scenes right outside our buildings, ranging from individuals walking down the street with machetes to being directly harassed by individuals who are in an altered state and in need of professional services. These issues have real and direct costs to our business beyond the emotional distress that our teams experience. We've incurred thousands of dollars of damage to our fleet and buildings. As we look to 22, we need to enhance our security system and video surveillance, lighting, landscape, fencing, and other security measures, which we will spend upwards of $100,000 to implement. The situation is making it increasingly difficult to do business in the neighborhood, and I'm here to ask today for urgent intervention to rechart this course. I urge you to improve the 911 system while immediately expanding the Portland Street Response, increase the behavioral health unit and service coordination team, and introduce temporary fixes to alleviate the stress on our community while this is being built. Thank you for letting me share today, and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, and I'll have some response to this at the very end, but I want to hear all of your presentations first. Thank you for your presentation, Lindsay. Next individual, please, Keelan, 763.
Request of Kim Malik to address council regarding safety in Central East Side.
Good morning, Kim.
Hi, thank you for having me. Good morning,
Thanks for being
Mayor,
here.
Commissioners. Thank you. And thanks to Kate for your partnership in the Central East Side. It's been just such an important lifeline for us. We have about 200 employees in Portland, which we're incredibly proud of. About 100 folks who work there in the Central East Side in our kitchen and our headquarters office. We've been on the East Side manufacturing for about 9 of our 10 years, and in our current facility at 2nd and Ankeny for about 4 years. I love Portland. I moved back to Portland specifically to start Salt and Straw. It couldn't have been birthed anywhere else. Our values, our ethos, the way we do business are all uniquely inspired by this city. When we expanded our manufacturing about 5 years ago, we worked so hard to stay inside the city. We had opportunities all over the place, and we made a very intentional decision to be where we are, but it's been really challenging to make it work right now. And given the substantial camps surrounding our particular building, the impact on our team and company sometimes seem insurmountable. I'm not here to villainize the people in the camps around our business. I respect them. I'm here to discuss how we can support them while also creating an environment that's safe for everyone. At the end of the day, my job is to provide a safe work environment for my employees in every way possible. I'm honored that they choose to be a part of our company, and I don't take that lightly. Right now, they do not feel safe. We too cannot keep up with the rate of issues that are mounting. My team members have been held up and assaulted multiple times. Their cars have been broken into and vandalized. I've had people leave their shifts owing more money to have their cars repaired than they made that day, maybe even that week. Graffiti on our building, vehicles, property, fires on the property have caught trees on fire and sent smoke into the building so bad that we've had to shut down on several occasions. People are shooting up as we come and go into work, and we're walking around needles and other debris that are hazardous and dangerous. Our team is propositioned regularly on the way into work and on on their breaks. Our compressors and freezers have been damaged, and we've lost ice cream repeatedly. We've lost candidates who have come to interview for positions and considered moving to Portland because they were so upset and uncomfortable with the working conditions surrounding our corporate headquarters. And I'm just honestly afraid of what headlines could be coming if we don't address this. I'm terrified that someone could be more seriously injured, and I don't want that on my watch. In addition to the thousands of dollars in repairs we're paying on an ongoing basis, we too are installing special lighting, security systems, painting, maintenance programs, and we've hired private security services. This is well in excess of $100,000 that could have been reinvested in our business, our people, our benefits, our growth, and more. Having said all of this, I just want to reiterate and be perfectly clear that I'm not here to complain. We want support for the people in the camps. I consider myself and our business a partner to the city in helping to come up with solutions to these problems that we face. I'm here to ask that you support the programs that are being brought forward to provide safety for everyone. It's just not safe on our streets for many populations. And I ask that you also please let me know what I can do personally and how my company can continue to help in these efforts. I thank you for allocating the proper budget to the resources that are being requested and getting the assistance to all of the people who are in need in our community. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Does that conclude the testimony on Central East Side?
Mayor, I think we have one more.
One more, Nyla's still up. Okay, very good. 764, please.
Request of Nyla Clark to address council regarding safety in Central East Side.
Good morning, Nyla.
Good morning. My name is Corey Evans. I'm the Assistant Care Coordinator for the Safety for All team. Nyla Clark has requested that I speak today on behalf of that team.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead. My name is Corey Evans, and I work on the Safety for All team.
The Safety for All team currently works to address many of the issues stated today, in that we provide a service removing barriers between potential resources and the individuals currently experiencing houselessness in the Central East Side. I myself have 10 years experience in social work with justice-involved individuals suffering with mental illness, and see many of the things that I saw in the facility currently outside in the Central East Side. It is difficult to go into all of the things that my team does out there in the name of removing those barriers. But a short list includes connecting people with the resources needed to acquire state IDs, assisting with and submitting paperwork for DHS resources, scheduling and maintaining appointments and communication between mental health and physical health providers, as well as assisting individuals in making it to those appointments, transportation and communication acquisition. Despite all the things we do, I sincerely believe that the strongest impact that we've had with those individuals experiencing houselessness in the Central East Side is providing consistency to individuals who experience so little of it in their day-to-day lives. We are out there every day meeting individuals and learning their histories and the barriers that they face. And to that end, I would like to share a story that my team experienced. We were out meeting individuals, and a woman approached me telling me she needed help. She was being abused by her partner, and she was on the street and didn't know what to do because the only housing that was afforded to her and her 2-year-old daughter was the suspected abuser's mother. My team spent hours calling every service we could conceive of. And at the end of the day, after contacting 18 services, being told by call to safety to call 211, 211 telling us to call to safety, and leaving dozens and dozens of voicemails, she had to spend another night on the street in a small tent with her suspected abuser. We did get a call back the next day from Gateway telling us that a shelter opportunity was possible in Hood River in 5 days. That's 5 more days she had to spend out there. That kind of delay goes up against what we consider a window of actionable goals. And when you miss that window, you'll find that people's success rates of completing those goals drops drastically. Calling the front desk rarely, I should say, yields results. We're put on wait lists and spend more time waiting than getting anything done for these individuals. And it's not until we begin to know the names of the players in the field, when we contacted Brian from TPI, who contacted Casey from Central City Concern, who found a shelter placement within TPI that evening, was the first success we had in this. And shelter and housing is such a limited resource that I understand that by nature, it needs to be protected for those most in need. But when you put in place artificial barriers, you're no longer serving the population most in need, those who do not have those advocates there for them. We work every day to remove those barriers, and whether it's artificial barriers perceived from lack of resources or actual lack of resources, people are not being served out there. I want to thank you for listening to me and giving me this time. I encourage you to do whatever you can to help these people. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some comments, but I'm going to let my colleagues go first. I see Commissioner Mapps has his hand up. Commissioner Mapps, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to express my appreciation to everyone who provided that powerful testimony today. I want the Central and East Side Industrial Council to know that I see that the work they do and appreciate it, and I'm dedicated to supporting your very important work. I also want to let the businesses that testified today know that I appreciate what they do and what they bring to Portland. You make Portland the great place that it is. And I also want to let everyone who testified today know that I heard you. I heard you call for improved 911 services, and I'm the commissioner in charge of that. We're working on that, and I think that we will have significantly improved services even by the end of this year. I also heard a call for expanded 311 services, and I'm partnering with the mayor to make that happen. I heard a call to expand Portland Street Response, and I support that, and I know every other member of council supports that too. I heard a call for increased investigations for arson, and that is an important issue which I will support too. I heard a call to expand the behavioral health unit and the service coordination team. I very much agree with that proposal. And I heard a call for more shelter beds. And I know Commissioner Ryan is doing innovative work on that item too. I believe that we can make significant progress on all of these issues as part of our fall bump process. I'd like to invite all of the speakers who testified today to come back in early November and share these stories again as we think about how to invest the resources that we have to make this city better. Again, I just want to thank everyone for their testimony, and I look forward to hearing from you again at our upcoming budget work sessions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll hand the mic back to my good friend, Commissioner Ryan.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. I almost put my hand down because much of what I would want to say was articulated very well by Commissioner Mapps. I think I'd like to just take a moment to address the urgent crisis on our streets of houselessness and say that with the 5-0 vote that was unanimous from this council, with support from Multnomah County commissioners and the chair, we are doing a lot right now to secure sites for safe rest villages, restorative places where people can be in privacy, receive services, build resilience. So when they do move into an apartment, the likelihood of them succeeding as an independent living human being in our city will go way up. Citing those properties is not easy. I'm getting up early every day to do those phone calls and much into the evening, but we're making progress. And I just want you to know we're working with other municipalities. This is an all-in effort. It's not just the 5 of us on this council that are enthusiastic about doing this work. It's about leaning in and partnering, of course, with the county. Much of the testimony today could also go over to the county since they oversee all the services for our houseless residents. And I just want you to know that we're working with other municipalities. Already TriMet stepped up to provide property. We've been in long conversations, of course, with Metro, with PPS, you name it. We all have to show up right now to respond with solutions and be innovative. And that's what we're up to right now on this city council, working with all of our partners. Your testimony really does help. It was so honest. It was something that we all can get behind. Our best days are coming if, in fact, we all seize this moment and we all lean into that shared sacrifice that leads to the shared opportunity that is necessary for our city at this time. So I just want to thank you for being here. It's very affirming why I'm working my tail off to find these properties, to site these villages so we can finally move towards solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, and thank you, Commissioner Mapps. I think you both said very, very well much of what I would say. So I won't belabor it except to say this. Thank you very much for coming in and providing your testimony. I concur with Commissioner Mapps that we absolutely need you to come in to testify on our full budget process, if you'd be willing to do so. And if not, we'd certainly accept written testimony. And I will certainly reference some of the testimony that we've heard this morning. And I'm asking this of all significant employers in the community as well. I want to assure you that as challenging as things are on the Central East Side, it's not just there. This is actually my 4th conversation today on this subject with employers in various parts of the city. And I assure you that this council is unified in its priorities around addressing homelessness, meaning getting as many people off the streets as quickly and humanely as possible. We are dedicated to improving public safety, and that not only includes reducing the incredible epidemic of gun violence we're seeing, but also the concerns that you have raised, that others have raised around issues like employee safety, issues related to petty theft, and other criminal activity that also takes a toll on the fabric of this community. Of course, improving livability is important for this council, and overlying all of it is COVID and the economic recovery that we want to continue to help support employers like you to be successful. All of the items that you mentioned, the policing issues, both the sworn officers as well as the unsworn PS3s, the improvements to the 911 system that Commissioner Mapps mentioned, and the continued extension of the work on the 311 system, the expansion of the Portland Street response model, improvements around shelter and humane alternatives to people living on our streets, and other items that you mentioned. I believe this council is unified in not only supporting those items, but supporting those items urgently. And you'll see us make good on my words when we pass our fall budget process. We're very fortunate in the tax proceeds were greater than expected. We have a bit of a windfall that we did not anticipate 6 months ago. We have, and it comes at exactly the right time when the community is demanding urgency around these specific actions. And I know you will continue to both partner with us as well as to hold us accountable. We'd expect nothing less. I want to thank you for being here, and we look forward to continuing to partner with you to address these issues. But the most important message I can convey this morning is we see you and we hear you and we understand the challenges that you are facing. You are not facing them alone, and we have a duty to lead, and we will. And that's my commitment to you. So thank you very much for being here today. We do appreciate it. And I hope we'll have many more interactions in the weeks and months to come. Keelan, we have one more individual signed up for communications. Item number 765, the next individual, please.
Request of Aubrey Russell to address council regarding Regional Arts and Culture Commission's request to conduct monument removal process.
Good morning, Aubrey.
Good morning. My name is Aubrey Russell, and I also want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing. I emailed to you RAC's July 22nd, 2020 memo to Parks and others outlining their plan to remove the city statues in 9 weeks with no public review or public comment. Under RAC's theory, Title 33, neighborhood contact, etc., would not be triggered if just the statues, not their bases, were removed. In recent weeks, RAC has been telling untruths about you, City Council. RAC says that the South Park Blocks plan, quote, recommends that statues be replaced. Because you adopted that plan, RAC attributes that recommendation to you. But the South Parks Block plan does not take up the issue of monuments. It does not decide the issue or recommend replacement. The text makes this clear and is confirmed by a Parks board member, Patty Tillett, in a letter to other Parks board and staff. Has Park staff objected to RAC's untruth? No, but they do add their own deception. I asked Tate White of Park staff why the master plan states, and city staff often repeat, quote, many comments were expressed related to the need to reconsider monuments. The plan appendix tells us that there were 9 comments related to statues. I asked Ms. White how this constitutes many. She told me, quote, we can't talk with every single person in the city. Quote, we have many conversations, but sometimes not everything is documented. Quote, it is very complex, the conversations that we are having. Quote, it can be confusing from the outside. I am confused. The Parks board might be confused. Would Park staff have continued this sort of deception for a year had the Parks board been made aware of RAC's July 2020 memo? Parks board was not told, and Park staff did continue. Park staff and art staff have been working with RAC to advance the idea of monument removal. As the South Park Blocks consultant notes, after July 2020, Park staff removed the recommendation from the plan that all art remain. Instead, Parks will, with RAC, quote, reevaluate the relevance of statues and monuments. This is not overt. It is in a footnote of an appendix. Park staff also added RAC as a potential future partner to explore, quote, potential replacement of, quote, art. Art, not statues, subtle, not overt. Again, if the Parks Board had been made aware of RAC's July 2020 memo, would they have approved of staff's addition of RAC as a partner to its South Park Blocks plan? There are reasons to question Park staff impartiality. Already the Oregonian in June of this year reported that the statues were not coming back. According to Park staff, art staff, and Commissioner Rubio's staff, the only question at that time was, quote, what art should replace them, end quote. Finally, as we start fresh with a new process, I hope the process looks less like the city's advocacy and more like public involvement. I sent you also another document that I recommend, the City of Portland's Public Involvement Principles. Again, I do want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm not here to complain. I want to be a part of the solution. And again, I understand the stresses and I appreciate your efforts in all these matters.
Aubrey, thank you. And thank you for your passion on this. I think Commissioner Rubio and I are meeting with you at some point in the very near future. I'm pretty sure I saw it on my schedule.
That's true. That's November 1st.
November 1st. Very good. And so I'll look forward to having a more in-depth on this conversation with you. And I appreciate your testimony today.
All right. Well, thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Keelan, that completes communications. Have any items been pulled off the consent agenda?
No.
Call the roll, please.
Max,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. With that, we'll move to time certain items. First time certain item, please. My plan's blocking it, but yep, we're over. Good. Item 766.
Accept Travel Portland Tourism Improvement District Progress Report.
Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Give me a moment to find my notes. Mr. Mayor, colleagues, the item before us right now is an update from Travel Portland on the returns on the investments from Portland's Tourism Improvement District 3% fee on overnight stays at hotels and vacation rentals. Travel Portland reinvests these revenues back into promoting Portland as a tourism destination. I bring this item before you because I serve as this council's liaison to Portland's tourism and hospitality industries. I have learned many things while on this assignment, and I'd like to take a moment to share some of the lessons I've learned with both this council and the people of Portland. First, I have good news. People all around the world are still curious about Portland and are interested in visiting and investing in our city. Second, I have some rougher news. People all around the world have questions and concerns about the state of things here in Portland. Here's the problem. Around the world, too many people associate Portland with homelessness and homicide. Today, a significant chunk of humanity is afraid of spending time and money in our city. This new skepticism of Portland is a significant factor holding back our city's cultural and economic recovery. I'd like to point out to my colleagues on council that this is a new problem for Portland. Historically, people associate Portland with good things. That's less true today than it has been in a long, long time. And the crisis in confidence in Portland has had a profound impact on the bottom line of many industries. The tourism industry is just one case study in the ways Portland's livability crisis is holding back our city's recovery. Tourism, I want to say, the third point I want to share with you is that which I've learned as a product of being this council's liaison to the tourism industry, is this. Portland's economy and culture will not recover from the COVID downturn until Portland's hospitality industry recovers. Consider this. In 2019, tourism supported about 36,000 jobs in the Portland metro area. In 2020, about 10,000 of those jobs disappeared, and Portland will not recover until we get these jobs back. The fourth lesson I have learned as this council's liaison to the tourism community is that Travel Portland is doing amazing work, helping Portland's hospitality industry navigate these turbulent times. Travel Portland has embraced challenge, change, and equity, and is doing cutting-edge work in each of these areas. Here to tell us more about Travel Portland's efforts to make Portland a more welcoming and equitable visitors destination, we have Jeff Miller, President and CEO of Travel Portland. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Mapps, council members. Portland Monthly did report that this report was going to be a barn burner, and I was on the hot seat. So I'm going to try and make this exciting. It's great to be invited back to share our work and the questions that were posed to us during the 1% Tourism Improvement District fee approval. We remain honored by your support and the hotel and short-term rental community who collect the TID funds. Our partnership helped build Portland into a global destination, and together we can regain that momentum. The new percent took effect in July, but because most companies pay quarterly, we are just beginning to see the flow of funds. Like last year, we've been on a roller coaster with a strong start to summer, then the Delta variant hobbled us to a degree, especially on the convention side of the business. We are $1 million less in revenue in the first quarter than we expected in this fiscal year. Our plan is to continue to watch expenses and to dip into reserves significantly to continue our work this year, and because of past good governance, we can do just that. I am very pleased to introduce you to Angela Nelson, our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She's already had virtual meetings with Commissioners Mapps and Hardesty, and we look forward to having time with the rest of council soon. I'll ask Angela to tell you a little about herself and what she sees on the horizon for Travel Portland.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Commissioners, and thank you, Jeff, for the introduction. As Jeff stated, I've had the opportunity to meet and engage in meaningful conversations with both Commissioners Mapps and Hardesty, so I look forward to meeting the rest of the council very soon. I've been a lifelong Michigander, born and raised in Flint, and spent my college and formative adult years in Grand Rapids. So moving to Oregon is my first experience living out of the state, despite being well-traveled. However, despite some of the visitor and media sentiments that Commissioner Mapps just shared about the safety and security of the city, I accepted this role with no regrets and have appreciated the warm welcome from everyone, from staff to commissioners to key community members alike. I'm still an outsider looking in, but I'm learning more about Portland's unique and not so unique challenges and opportunities. But the one thing I've witnessed since my arrival is your spirit of hope and promise. DEI, social justice, and community building work is hard and often emotionally exhausting, but I'm eager to do the hard work, but necessary work, with which I'm not a stranger to. The good news is that Travel Portland, your city's visitor and convention bureau, has already laid a great foundation and began to set the table from their founding partnership with Portland Means Progress to collaborative efforts with Prosper Portland and My People's Market, to improving its RFP process to ensure equitable consideration when sourcing consultants and vendors, to being intentional about its board and staff representation and overall understanding that DEI is more than a social imperative, just a good thing to do, right? But that it is an organizational and leadership, but that the organization and leadership understand that DEI must be a key priority embedded into every facet of its operations. In this time, DEI is as important as your marketing, your sales, and your financial functions within organizations. In this role, I will internally partner with team members to serve as a thought leader, a subject matter expert, and resource to management to ensure that the organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and cultural competence is aligned with Travel Portland's overall strategic and operational plans and processes, as well as actively collaborating with the convention and sales and services team to market Portland as a preferred destination for organizations, associations, and communities of color and women. That's just a few. Externally, I will be responsible for building strong relationships with local community, neighborhoods, and diverse groups, businesses, nonprofits, and religious organizations in order to fulfill the mission of Travel Portland. I will also develop, oversee, and participate in tourism stakeholder initiatives that support racial equity and inclusion programs. This includes, but is not limited to, outreach to communities of color leaders to ensure that Travel Portland is engaged in dialogue to develop strategies that support their economic and growth opportunities. As I continue to adjust and navigate my way with my role here at Travel Portland and this beautiful city, again, I look forward to meeting many of you and other key stakeholders. I look forward to acquainting myself with your work and your interests, and to connect and discuss the ways that we can work together to continue to strategically advance DEI initiatives that help us better attract and meet the needs of all visitors. Jeff will now provide you with the update to the questions that Commissioner Hardesty had of us, and I think you will be pleased with our efforts. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And I will say that we reviewed much of this with Commissioner Hardesty a week ago, and she seemed pleased with our progress. And with that, I'll jump into the questions. Question one was, what has the outreach strategy been to diverse convention interest, and what have been the results of that outreach? Travel Portland deploys 2 sales managers against the effort of procuring future diverse meetings and conventions, along with an extensive program of work. Tracy Chapman for citywide conventions, seen here with Lisa Chan from the Convention Center sales team, and a client. Chanel Shiragi for self-contained hotel programs. Travel Portland, through collaboration with local stakeholders, diverse business owners, continually work to identify opportunities to create strategic partnerships that connect Portland's diverse communities, talent, and businesses to convention hosting opportunities. And of course, Angela will work to ensure we make these connections beneficial both for our community and for the conventions we host. Travel Portland's continual pursuit of diverse group bookings has translated into a successful lineup of future meetings and convention business. NCORE, the National Council on Race and Ethnicity in American Higher Education, returns to Portland for the second time in 4 years. Commissioner Hardesty spoke to the group when they were here last. To date, future bookings total over 25,000 room nights, 15,800 convention delegates to Portland, and approximately $16 million in estimated economic impact. Question 2 and 3 are similar, so I'll do them together. How are businesses of color being supported and helping to bring back tourism to the city? And what businesses are being supported and highlighted through marketing with this additional resource? I'm really excited to share our answers to these questions. And in doing so, it's important to understand that these results don't just happen. They happen because we are intentional in this work, applying a DEI lens to everything we do. Our PR team continues to lead the way for the city in generating positive media coverage. Given the state of the city and the position Portland occupies in the national consciousness, this work has never been more important or more difficult to execute. But our team has risen to the challenge, and in our proactive media work, we've redoubled our efforts to ensure that minority-owned businesses are included in every story pitch. We've also created story pitches that focus exclusively on minority-owned businesses. Since July, our team has engaged with nearly 300 travel content creators with at least one of these angles, but often many more. This proactive, intentional approach to media relations has produced some terrific media coverage for Portland. Here's one terrific clip from September 21st. Our team worked with Uproxx, an entertainment and culture website, which ranked Portland #1 on their list of global destinations this fall and explained why now is the perfect time to visit the city. Note the subheadline, Portland is a city experiencing massive upheaval and why now is the perfect time to visit. And they highlighted a number of minority-owned businesses, which you see here. Here's another example, this September 13th article from Travel and Leisure, which wrote about all the positive things that await visitors to Portland. Our team worked directly with the writer to highlight the breadth and depth of Portland's minority-owned businesses, a number of which were included in the piece. And here's another result of our effort, Deadstock Coffee's inclusion in this article in Essence magazine by a journalist of color who visited the city due to Travel Portland's efforts. On the advertising side, we forged partnerships with digital publishers like Eater, with whom we worked, to leverage the buzz around Top Chef Portland and to populate their popular heat maps with minority-owned restaurants, including several handpicked by Top Chef star and Portland's own Gregory Gourdet. We also partnered with Vice, which published and promoted to their readership articles highlighting creatives of color, as well as minority-owned restaurants. Our support for minority-owned businesses went beyond highlighting them in our ads and PR pitches. We also invested in creatives of color. Through the RFP process in which we chose Industry, a minority-founded and led firm, we also identified 3 Black-owned firms with which we have contracted to produce videos and other content for our website and social media channels. And as another of our intentional work, we engaged a DEI consultant, Kathleen Holt, who is the interim executive director of Apano and former editor at Oregon Humanities, to evaluate and improve our overall approach to content production, ensuring that we are applying a DEI lens and, importantly, giving people of color decision-making power at every step of the editorial process. Concurrently, we have synced our website data with the Mercatus directory to establish a baseline of coverage of BIPOC-owned businesses and develop new story ideas. Here are some of the ads Industry created for our summer campaign that highlighted minority-owned businesses, which was Deadstock Coffee, Han Oak, and Aurochs Leather. Also, as part of the summer campaign, we partnered with local influencers who shared their favorite minority-owned businesses. And in our social media channels, we make a concerted effort to highlight and amplify BIPOC-owned businesses, especially in our Instagram stories, our channel with the highest visibility. Our community engagement team is working hard on the ground to ensure that minority-owned businesses are maximizing their opportunities to connect with visitors and their dollars. Travel Portland's no-cost partnership level called Insider offers a powerful benefit: free access to the services offered by Local, and that's LOCL, the Portland-based company specializing in Google optimization. It is a primary goal this fiscal year to bring Local to more BIPOC-owned, visitor-facing businesses. Travel Portland is collaborating with Prosper Portland to offer this free program to Mercatus members. Portland's food cart scene is well known for its immense and delicious offerings of diverse foods from around the world, and so are its talented operators. To increase awareness in the tourism economy and the free participation in Travel Portland's popular food cart finder, look it up, personal outreach to many of the food cart pods continues strong. But our strategic, intentional efforts don't end there. Travel Portland is a founding member of Portland Means Progress, and we promote their virtual workshops to all of our Travel Portland partners, which number over 1,300 right now. The training on intentional purchasing created immense awareness of the Mercatus PDX directory for procurement opportunities. We remain a supporter of My People's Market and have expanded our event-specific investment to include Taste for Equity, which in September honored local equity heroes while showcasing a diverse group of local chefs, winemakers, brewers, spoken word artists, and others. Question 4, who is benefiting from the new 1%? Is it mostly benefiting Central City hotels, or can we show smaller, less centrally hotels are benefiting? Here you see the very first report from the city's Revenue Bureau on the taxes and TID fees collected for Travel Portland. We will use these to benchmark our success in each part of the city. And because this comes from new software, they and we don't have historical information, so we will benchmark from here. As we see conventions and downtown hotels recover, we expect the Central City percentage to increase, while the East Side and Jansen Beach percentages will likely fall, even as the dollar amounts increase. Also interesting is the amount from short-term rentals, which is frankly a bit higher than I expected. Our board approved the addition of a new board position, which will be filled by a limited service local owner or ownership group. Ash Patel holds that spot, but we were fortunate to also recruit Ketan Patel for an open hotelier position. I've joined the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, and Greg Newland, our chief marketing officer, was able to attend a recent regional meeting to introduce Travel Portland. We are actively working to ensure we make connections to the broadest hotel community possible. Question 5. With staff layoffs, has this 1% allowed staff to be rehired, and what is the demographic breakdown of the new hires? Prior to our layoffs, we had 69 employees. 13 of those were multicultural. We currently have 45 employees and 11 are multicultural. Of those that we've hired back since our last meeting, 33% are from diverse backgrounds and 100% are women. And of the 9-member executive and senior team, 3 are of diverse background and 5 are women. Diverse leadership matters, and we focused on board diversity for many years with detailed demographic information to ensure broad representation. The Board of Directors column includes the 3 elected officials, Commissioner Mapps, Chair Kafori, and Metro Councilor Shirley Craddock, but they are not included in the non-lodging numbers as we have discretion on those positions, and you can see our statistics there. Question 6, what federal support has Travel Portland received? As you can see, we received a PPP loan, which has been forgiven, and we've spent $1.6 million out of reserves for fiscal year 21. Travel Portland deferred some payments in order to protect our cash reserves. So in fiscal year 22, we began paying on $750,000 of deferred rent and $135,000 in deferred Social Security payments. The EDA grant with Metro will provide relief for personnel, travel, and contracting for a creative agency in fiscal year 22 and 23. The grant will be shared with Merck OCC, and we are recognizing about $200,000 in revenue this year, so it's a relatively small amount. And now for a quick update on some other efforts affecting tourism. Citywide convention groups meeting in Portland are slowly beginning to return following pandemic restrictions. Portland-specific issues related to civil unrest and public safety concerns has exacerbated the negative occurrences of declining attendance and group cancellations. While the region struggles with solutions to local safety concerns, the impact on meetings and convention in future months and years remains evident as Portland hotels continue to experience attrition and cancellations well into the future. The increased funding allowed us to add to our annual strategic partnership with Sport Oregon. Jim Etzel and his team have been longtime partners, but this funding allowed them to hire dedicated sales positions, and you'll see Damian Williams pictured above. Their focus for Portland will be on adding room nights through these events. The funds also allow them to recruit amateur and professional sporting events at the level of major U.S. destinations, as well as participate in national trade shows and sports tourism events. You see some of the successes on screen already. Here's a snapshot of the last 3 years of hotel rooms sold. You can see clearly the Delta variant and other Portland-specific factors continue to hamper us as we move into August and September, which is the red line. And the number that you and we depend on is hotel revenue for our portions of the lodging tax. While September of this year is twice last year, it remains half of 2019. And I've shared our consumer research and other meetings, and the one chart we've hung our hats on is that if you have been here, you're likely to come back. You can see here that in Q3, we saw significant drops in yes and a spike in no, I'm not likely to come back. The next wave of research arrived just yesterday, and the yes line ticked up to 64%. So some recovery, but a long way to go. This slide and the next few are the most sobering of the presentation. Reputation matters, and reputation recovery only happens when real change happens on the ground where people can see it. For Portland-specific issues related to the visibility of racial and social protests, this particular slide depicts the impact of those protests on a likelihood of a delegate attending a meeting in the next 24 months. 2/3 of attendees indicate their likelihood is highly impacted by the visibility of racial and social protests. Posing the same question from a meeting planner's perspective, given the visibility of race and social protest in Portland over the last year, please rate the extent to which that impacts your likelihood of booking a meeting in Portland in the next 24 months. More than half of planners indicate their likelihood is impacted a great deal. Continued attacks and breaking of glass on buildings throughout the city, but especially downtown, continue to affect this hard to overcome sentiment. Our central city occupancy in September lags every competitive city we track except Minneapolis and San Francisco. Recovery is happening elsewhere, just not here. In sharing some recent survey data on meeting planner and convention delegate sentiment, Portland continues to experience a decline in standing amongst preferred convention destinations. This two-part slide captures where attendees are most likely to attend a meeting for either business or leisure purposes in the next 24 months. Throughout the ongoing phases of this study, Portland's status went in a negative direction due to the impact of sustained public perception issues. In the most recent iteration of this study, Portland has declined to the lowest levels of being a likely destination for delegates to attend the conference. We are now in the company of Kansas City and Corpus Christi. Portland used to be in the company of cities well above our size, like Seattle, San Francisco, and Denver. The impact of this is that we likely won't even get the opportunity to bid on many conventions for the next 2 years, which will affect our long-term successes well into the future. We have much work to do together. This council's focus on public safety and livability is crucial, and we need our government partners at the state, county, and metro to work even more collaboratively to make real change happen in the city we love. Our success depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, it wasn't uplifting, but I didn't expect it to be. What we need is what you provided, which is honest and clear data. And you've made it clear we have a lot of work to do. I'll turn this over, first of all, to my colleagues. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask the team. Commissioner Mapps.
I was just going to take a moment to thank Jeff and Angela for that powerful presentation. I think there's an awful lot of good news there. I really want to congratulate the team over at Travel Portland for the thoughtful and equitable way they have invested our tourism fees. I also want to thank Travel Portland for the amazing work they've done in advancing this council's goals surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would like to take a moment to welcome Angela Nelson to Portland and thank her for her service to our city. And I also want to reassure my colleagues on council and Travel Portland that I look forward to continuing to work with them to address the challenges facing the hospitality industry and our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. I'll jump in here while Commissioner Ryan, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Mapps, first of all, thank you for supporting the work and partnering with Travel Portland. It's always good to see you, Jeff, and it's wonderful to meet you, Angela Nelson, a Michigander turning into an Oregonian. I just wanted to say Michigander, and I really do look forward to meeting with you, and I let my team know that. You know, the entire team at Travel Portland for the work on this report was refreshing in many ways because we had the meeting back in March. And I recall all the questions that were asked of you. And basically, you came back with answers. And so that just shows a lot of willingness, sincerity, and accountability. It was really wonderful to listen to some of the proactive marketing and work that you're doing with the media. I love the headline, "Massive Upheaval, and Now is the Time to Visit." And pivoting the data on the financial balance sheet that you presented was very grim. The information about reputation was not surprising, and yet it was very profound to just see the answers, to see the graphs, and to see the data. I know I have a dear friend who volunteered at a convention about a month ago, and she was texting me wildly from her point as a volunteer. She's a retired nurse and was providing services. And she, like me, has grown up here. And she said it was really depressing to have so many people approach her that were angry that we allowed ourselves to even host a big convention. Like we weren't ready for it. And many people felt unsafe. And I think we just have to be honest about this truth. This council is being responsive, and we'll go deeper with that in the bump. And I'm just well aware that our part of this is to focus on our top issues that are the big barriers from having someone want to spend their free time and their money or their business conventions here in Portland. And that is to stay focused on the houselessness crisis and in our community safety. Those are what's impacting this reputation feedback. So I'm well aware that what our responsibility is to partner with you. I want to thank you for being responsive to our concerns about how you can knit together the right thing to do for racial equity, how you can lean into justice, and how it's good for everything, the balance sheet as well. And so it's just great to have new talent and representing our city. We will come back. We will get back on the top of that list. We're not in the right place where we need to be. We're all well aware of that. But thank you for coming and telling us the truth, and for your sincerity as a partner to follow through with questions that were posed back in March. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Rubio.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Jeff, for coming back to council. I'll echo what my colleagues have said. I really appreciate and really respect a lot that you have circled back and you've gotten very specific and granular about the questions that were outstanding. And it's very clear that you've taken action on them. And I really appreciate the frank discussion and acknowledging there's work for us all to do together to lift up the amazing things that we're doing in Portland and the diversity of the community that is here and the values that we hold and bringing that forward. I also want to welcome Angela to Portland, and I'm so excited for your role here, and I can't wait to see how your work shapes this work. It's going to be really great to watch and to participate in that with you together. The data was interesting, and I look forward to following up with you more about that and with any other questions, and would love to hear also more about plans with your new and developing diverse partnerships. I'm also excited for the coming conferences that you outlined that are new or returning, and I look forward to the continuing conversation. So thank you for coming back, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. So I want to add my thanks to you for your partnership. And I want to thank you for all the work you do on behalf of the city. But you have provided us with data. Again, we're not surprised by it. It's data we get from you on a regular and ongoing basis. And we appreciate you fulfilling your obligation by coming in and presenting this testimony publicly. What is very clear to me is, as you look at the city's reputation, and it is badly damaged at this point, and we have to be honest about that, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what do we need to do to fix it, to turn the tide? And I've come to the conclusion, as I think it was Commissioner Ryan who hinted at it, that we're not ready for marketing. I'm not saying stop your marketing, but right now people don't buy it. What they want to see is results. They want to see action. And colleagues, this is my 5th conversation today on this subject. All of these items are related: safety, homelessness, livability, and economic recovery. That's the good news. They're related. And so if our council keeps our focus on reducing unsanctioned homeless camps and finding humane alternatives and reducing the impact of homelessness on our community, if we continue to work to strengthen our public safety function, if we continue to do the work we're doing around livability. And by the way, there's a good article in this morning's Willamette Week that sort of explains not only where we're headed around livability issues, but some of the complexities of managing those issues. Then I believe some of the economic recovery will follow. And a key component of this economy locally has always been travel, tourism, and conventioneering. And right now, that piece of our business, that piece of our economy is in significant jeopardy. So Jeff and Angela, what I want you to hear from this council, and if you were here earlier for the public testimony from the folks from the Central East Side Industrial District, we do agree as a council. We're unified on these priorities. We're even unified to a large degree on the specific strategies. We're certainly unified around the urgency. We will be allocating resources in the near term in this fall budget process towards addressing the issues that you raised as being primary concerns of people who responded to your surveys. And we're going to continue to push resources into these areas. I also appreciate, Jeff and Angela, your acknowledgement that a lot of what we're seeing at the street level here in the city of Portland was neither created by nor can it be solved by Portland alone. There are some societal issues here as well. And for a variety of reasons, Portland has become an epicenter. And it never ceases to anger and frustrate me that a bunch of kids with hammers can damage an age-old positive reputation of an incredible city. But they can, particularly in a media environment where every single broken window becomes a national story. And when they happen en masse, as they did just a couple of weeks ago, it's deservedly a national story. And so that's on us. That's public safety. And when it comes to some of the other safety concerns, the kinds that Commissioner Ryan indicated that his friend had called into him, and Dan, I appreciate it when you shared that with me a couple of weeks ago, that also has to be addressed. So this is a long way of saying we need you and your partnership. We need the folks that you've brought together. You have an outstanding team. We look forward to continuing to do that work. And on the flip side, we are committing here and now, as we have previously, to continue to partner with you and seek the necessary actions to get the results you need to rebuild the public's confidence that Portland is a safe and great city to travel to. We've got a long way to go. The part that I found the most interesting in your presentation wasn't that people are concerned about safety or homelessness or livability. I already knew that. I think what's more interesting is your data starting to tell us how long it's going to take to recover the reputation. There's an old saying that it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and you can ruin it in an instant. And that's true of cities as it is people. And we're just going to have to commit to that long-term process of improving the safety and the livability and the economic prosperity of this city, and acknowledge it's going to take us working together and pulling in the same direction for a long time to get us where we need to go. But we will get there. And so when my colleagues express optimism and hope for the future, I share that optimism and hope. And we're just going to have to keep our heads down and keep doing the hard work that it's going to take to recover our cities, not only our reputation, but the reality of this city at the street level. So I really appreciate your being here. Colleagues, this is a report. I'll entertain a motion unless anybody has any further questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we accept this report.
I'll second it.
Thank you. I have a motion from Commissioner Mapps, a second from Commissioner Ryan. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mapps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the report's accepted. Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you probably sooner rather than later.
Yes, thank you.
Next item, also a time certain report, 767, please.
Accept Portland Parks and Recreation Board 2021 annual report.
Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. Parks and Recreation has a highly engaged board with members who bring a broad set of skills and expertise. They're passionate about parks, recreation programs, natural areas, community health, and the mission of the Bureau to provide meaningful access to parks and recreation for all Portlanders. One of the duties of the board outlined in their bylaws is to prepare an annual report for council, which summarizes the board's activities during the year and identifies the major issues facing the Bureau. It includes the board's recommendations for addressing these concerns in the coming year. Portland Chair Bonnie G. Yosick is joining us this morning to present the board's report, which covers fiscal year 2020 and 21 activities, accomplishments, and upcoming issues. I want to share my appreciation for the board volunteering their time and energy in service to our community, for their work on the Bureau's Budget Advisory Committee, and for providing feedback on various Bureau efforts. So much appreciation and thanks to them. Now I'd like to introduce Bonnie G. Yosick to review the board's report.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Can you all hear me? Terrific, thank you. Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, my name is Bonnie G. Yosick. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the privilege of chairing the Portland Parks and Recreation Board. Currently, the board is composed of 15 voting members who represent the diversity of our city, and 2 non-voting ex officio members, 1 representing the Portland Parks Foundation and 1 representing the Urban Forestry Commission. As Commissioner Rubio stated, the board is required to deliver to the City Council an annual report summarizing its activities during the prior fiscal year and identifying the issues facing the Bureau, including the board's recommendation for addressing those issues. We submitted a written letter, and I appear before you today to deliver this report. As you know, the board was established in 2001 to ensure that the aspirations of the 2020 vision were at the forefront of discussions about Portland parks and related programs, to ensure that parks, natural areas, open spaces, and recreational facilities are advanced in planning and design, and to provide a forum for public discussion on park issues, bringing both a citywide and long-term perspective. All the board's work is driven by the values of equity, inclusion, and accessibility in delivering parks and recreation services, and the necessity of extending those services to all Portlanders, especially those who've been historically underserved. The board believes that to be a great city, Portland must have great parks, open spaces, natural areas, and recreation opportunities, equitably distributed and accessible to all. The board also acknowledges that the Bureau is facing a crisis, both in bridging a deferred maintenance gap of over $500 million and relying on systems that have not historically provided financial sustainability. If the current systems providing financial support for the Bureau are not substantially changed, the park system and recreation programming that is used and treasured by nearly all Portlanders is seriously threatened. The COVID pandemic has highlighted the importance of parks to Portland communities, providing a needed refuge, with parks facilities even serving as shelters in times of crisis. Because of COVID-19, the board did not meet in person after March of 2020 and did not provide a report to City Council for the 2019-20 fiscal year. The pandemic also fundamentally altered the Bureau's operations, yet the board has remained steadfast in promoting its core values. In terms of major board activities during the 2020-21 fiscal year, we've been working with Bureau leadership to develop a new strategic planning framework known as Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. With the term of the 2020 vision plan now in the past, the City Council is aware of this new strategic planning framework. The board has been involved in listening sessions and has provided Bureau leadership with advice on the Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, with particular emphasis on equity of availability of parks and programming, and assuring that those who have been historically excluded are actively sought out for meaningful engagement through the Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland planning process. Board members have also become members of 3 work groups that are supporting specific aspects of this plan. The board, through its Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group, has also reviewed, invited comment, and provided recommendations on significant projects affecting the Parks Bureau, including the I-5 Rose Quarter improvements, earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge, the South Park blocks, the Green Loop, and Forest Park entry at Northwest St. Helens Road. The board also reviewed and responded to the initial shelter to housing continuum proposal and provided City Council with a letter of support of the Bureau's position on that initial proposal, but highlighting community needs that have yet to be adequately addressed. Through its Financial Sustainability Working Group and as a full board, the board and its members participate in a variety of ways to address present and future financial concerns facing the Bureau, including reviewing and commenting on internal and external financial reports provided by Bureau staff, researching and reviewing different possible revenue sources to achieve long-term financial sustainability, serving on the Bureau's Budget Advisory Committee, ensuring adherence to the guiding values of care, meaning maintenance, safety, equity, and both environmental and financial sustainability. In accordance with a request by the late Commissioner Fish, the board has also continued working with staff from both the Parks Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services on a process improvement plan with the goal of improving efficiencies between the 2 bureaus. And the board continued to provide a forum for Portlanders to voice any concern about any Portland Parks facility or program. At our virtual retreat in June of 2021, the board identified the following priorities for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. We hope to continue to support financial sustainability as I stated before, financial sustainability is one of the most pressing issues facing the Parks Bureau. The board hopes to become involved in the annual financial planning process earlier, investigate and identify alternative possible resources that could assist the Bureau financially, both long-term and short-term, and continue to provide a forum for review and input on ideas for the future of financial sustainability to maintain and grow a parks and recreation system that is equitably distributed and accessible to all Portlanders. We hope to stay involved in major infrastructure projects, such as the Green Loop and earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge and their impacts on the Park Bureau, again, with particular focus on racial equity and equality of access, as well as ensuring input from historically marginalized groups. We hope to support meaningful community engagement by assisting the Bureau as it engages with members of the community and community groups, both through prescribed engagement processes, as well as informal day-to-day contact, so that all Portlanders feel safe and welcome at all park assets and participating in all Bureau programs. We hope to co-develop mission and vision statements and support strategic actions and results as we continue to assist in the development and implementation of Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, with particular focus on racial equity and equality of access, as well as ensuring input from historically marginalized groups. With the development of Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, it will be necessary for the board to develop and recommend to City Council a revised mission statement for the board, which was originally based on Vision 2020. It will be unique to the board, but in harmony with the mission and vision of the Bureau. As part of the preparation of a revised mission statement, we will also draft a revised affirmation of equity statement that will guide the board in all its activities. We hope to meet with each of you in the coming year to discuss these priorities in more detail. And we welcome you and your staff to attend any of our meetings, which are held the second Tuesday of every month. Thank you for your support and commitment to our park system. I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Commissioner Mapps.
Bonnie, thank you so much for this testimony. I'm not sure if this question is for you or for park staff, but I was wondering if there's anyone on this Zoom call who could expand on the board's recommendations surrounding the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge. That proposal sparked my interest because I think of the Burnside Bridge as being a county project. How does this intersect with the city of Portland and parks?
Yeah, I can start. And if I know that I saw Adina Long on the call, and if she wants to jump in, she's welcome to. So oftentimes, if there are outside projects, they do come to the Parks Board and the Parks Bureau because they do have impacts on the parks assets. And in this case, the earthquake-ready Burnside Bridge project. It is a Multnomah County project, you're correct there. And their consultants and the Multnomah County staff came to the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group to present in terms of ways that any particular design issues that would affect parks assets might impact either the management of those assets or any programming that might. So you're correct, it's a county-led project. But in terms of, it's a way that our partnership, I think, helps strengthen the partnership between the city and the county in that way. So if Director Long would like to expand on that, I see she put her video on.
Regardless of what type of bridge is chosen, there's going to be impacts on both sides of the river where we hold assets. And so we'll continue to have conversations with the county about mitigation that would be required. We're also particularly interested in how the bridge lands and access from the bridge down to the East Bank Esplanade. And so there's a lot of conversations around what would be the best way, elevators, ramps, various styles of ramps and such. So, the Bureau's well engaged with the county on that. And the Parks Board has a land use and infrastructure subcommittee to which we bring these types of projects to on a monthly basis. So the Parks Board is very much engaged in those conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful. I know in my conversations with staff on this, I heard that one crucial issue is whether or not the county includes a ramp for the bridge. It's my understanding that if the county builds a ramp, that might create an opportunity for parks to add new facilities or new opportunities on the waterfront. Is that correct? Or is it more complex than that?
It's a little bit more complex than that. I think that the city in general has had some experience around elevators versus ramps, both as it relates to access and safety of pedestrians. A ramp situation would definitely impact the East Bank Esplanade, and we'd want to work really closely with the county to ensure that we can continue to have access and that any other additional improvements that can be made would work in concert. My understanding is that the current price tag for the bridge well exceeds the funding in hand. And so Parks does not have funding in place to make any improvements on the other side. So it's going to be a very important conversation moving forward, especially as it relates to resources to get the work done.
Okay, thank you, Director Long. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. If there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
I'll second.
Commissioner Rubio moves, Commissioner Ryan seconds the report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mapps. It looks like you said aye.
Aye, sorry.
Okay,
Did you
sorry
hear me?
about
My
that.
phone's going off too, so it's chaos over here.
Thank you. Rubio.
I want to thank Chair G. Yosick for her report today, and as well as all the work that the board has done over the past 2 years, as well as Parks leadership, Director Long and the staff. Thank you so much. The board's dedication to the Portland community's parks and recreation system is deeply appreciated, and we're actively tracking and engaging on these issues with leadership and are deeply focused, as always, on the Bureau's long-term sustainability and access. I also want to lift up that the board also recognizes that central to these discussions are equity of access and services for all Portlanders, and this includes the lens that is used, how we plan, and who's at the table. And for that, I'm greatly appreciative. So we look forward to continuing to work with you, Chair, as well as the board and Director Long on these issues. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes. First of all, Commissioner Rubio, thank you for bringing this forward, the 2021 annual report for Portland Parks and Rec. I want to thank you for your leadership and for the Bureau and the Bureau's leadership here with Director Long and the board. I just want to say it was so wonderful to hear from board leadership. Thank you, Bonnie, for being here. And I want to also pause for a moment and say thank you for being a refuge for so many of us during COVID. If it wasn't for the access to doing walks in the parks, I'm sure I'm not the only one in Portland that is so grateful that you continued to operate and to provide access for all of us as we needed a chance to just go outside and get some fresh air and actually see people, see some humanity. I also want to say that I had a wonderful opportunity last night to spend time with your philanthropic arm, the Parks Foundation, and we had a very good, I think, honest, compassionate conversation about how the intersection between parks and our houselessness crisis. Too often, these very complex challenges are met with some very not so complex solutions and reactions. And what I really appreciated last night was how we leaned into the reality of this very challenging crisis that we're all dealing with. And part of that was mentioned earlier with you all leaning in when we did the shelter to housing continuum work. No one wants our parks to be taken over by unsanctioned camping. Everyone wants our parks to be a place where we can feel safe and welcome. And when you say it's about healthy parks and healthy Portland, that's actually a really true statement. It's not just a slogan. So I also just want to thank you as partners as we all do some shared sacrificing and shared commitments as we move forward and out of this crisis. We're well aware that there is an intersection And we're doing everything we can to move from unsanctioned camping to restorative villages where services are offered so that people can build resilience and move out of the deplorable conditions that they're in, that's impacting their lives and everyone around them. So I just wanted to connect those dots because it was fresh on my mind from being a guest last night with your foundation board. Anyway, this presentation really got to the heart of the matter as well about, I would say, it sounds like it's been years, the challenges with your financial model. This council, with the leadership of Commissioner Rubio, will lean in and really get to the bottom of that, again, uncover the real truths and figure out how we can move forward.
Did you just freeze?
If you will, for the parks. And I'm looking forward to being very supportive of Commissioner Rubio, Director Long, and all of you in the parks family. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I want to pick up where Commissioner Ryan left off. Commissioner Rubio, thank you for your exceptional leadership of the Parks Bureau. That is a large bureau. It's one that's watched very, very closely by the people of Portland. Our parks are beloved, and woe be to he or she who mismanages them. And you've done an exceptional job, and you've been a quick study, and I want to thank you for your continued leadership in that regard. Director Long, we are privileged to have you in the directorship position of what is arguably our most beloved bureau. It was a good day when we recruited you from New York. New York's never been the same since. Thank you for your leadership, and to everybody who contributed to this report. This has actually been a good year for the parks. And I'll take you back a couple of years ago, colleagues, when Nick Fish was the commissioner in charge of the Bureau, we were looking at significant budget shortfalls. And I realize that was raised as an issue today, but the outlook is much, much better than it was just a few years ago when we were looking at closing. I think it was as many as 15%, as much as 15% of our parks assets in order to be able to balance our budget. We then immediately went into COVID and then needed to find $90 million in reductions, and that hit the Parks Bureau hard. We then went into the shutdown related to COVID, and we saw revenue fall off as a result of the closing of our community centers and our recreational programs. And yet you have all persevered. And not only have you persevered, in the meanwhile, a significant ballot measure went to the public, and the public overwhelmingly said, even in uncertain economic times, we want to support our parks and continue to invest in them for the future. And that really speaks to the community in which we serve. So this was a good report. It shows the highlights, the good. It also shows some of the ugly and the work that we need to do fiscally. We'll continue to do that under your leadership. And I always appreciate hearing this report. I'm happy to vote aye. Thank you. The report is accepted. And with that, we'll move to item 768, which is a proclamation. Time certain.
Proclaim October 2021 to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Colleagues, this morning we're recognizing the annual Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Before I introduce our distinguished guests, I want to thank the Pink Lemonade Project for working to draft this proclamation and for all of their tireless work in the community. The Pink Lemonade Project is a Vancouver-based, community-based nonprofit that serves women and men affected by breast cancer all across the Portland and Vancouver metropolitan area. This organization offers a range of really important programs, supports, and events for those patients and families that are affected by this disease. With the closure of our local Komen affiliate last March, Pink Lemonade Project is stepping up and has agreed to continue some of Komen's programs that support special segments of those with breast cancer, including those living with metastatic breast cancer and those with geographic barriers to care. The organization is aiming to expand to meet the growing need all across our community. We're all grateful for that. I'd like to now introduce two guests who are joining us today for this proclamation. We have Mayor Don Stoss, Mayor of Ridgefield, Washington, who also serves as board chair of Pink Lemonade Project, as well as Susan Stearns, who's the CEO of Pink Lemonade Project. And I just have to say, Mayor, where you find the time to lead all these significant community efforts in addition to your duties as mayor is beyond me, but it speaks to your values as a human being. So thank you so much for your leadership. And Susan, thank you for your continued leadership and working on behalf of all of us in this region. Don, I think you're up first.
And thank you for your proclamation. Breast cancer affects women and men of all ages. Breast cancer does not discriminate. Pink Lemonade Project, our goal is to help as many women and men as possible in Southwest Washington and Oregon navigate through their breast cancer journey. We understand the need to help those affected by breast cancer who are uninsured or underinsured. The need is great. Pink Lemonade Project offers funding through their breast cancer treatment. Our small staff and team of volunteers are proud to help those with breast cancer. We look forward to expanding our support programs in the future. So again, thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Susan?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, first of all, thank you for your time on the agenda today. There's always so much going on, and we appreciate a few moments to talk about breast cancer awareness during our month of October. Thank you. But also really, Pink Lemonade Project is stepping up. It is significant that our region has lost the local Komen affiliate. It was a really fantastic organization that served many and was able to develop programs that filled unmet need. So with Komen leaving, we are doing our best to step up and serve, as you said, all of Oregon, but really to take on new programs that serve segments of the breast cancer community that are not well covered by other programs or the healthcare system. So people with geographic barriers to care, which is a top social determinant of health, as well as people with a metastatic diagnosis, which is a terminal diagnosis. And those are women and who need additional support and extra help to get them through their final years. So just thank you for the time and attention on the issue. And we're doing our part to take our teeny organization and grow it to serve more across the Portland and Vancouver metro area, as well as the rest of Oregon.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Mayor Don. Commissioner Mapps.
If this is an appropriate time to share some thoughts, I'd like to do that. If
go ahead.
Mayor. Great. First, let me start off by thanking Don and Susan for joining us today. And thank you for your important work on this crucial topic. Colleagues, I'm delighted to join you in proclaiming October 2021 to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Portland, Oregon. During Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we stand with those who have been diagnosed with that dreaded disease. And we honor those who have lost their battle to breast cancer. We reaffirm our commitment to raising awareness of this disease, and we applaud the advocates, medical professionals, researchers, and caregivers who dedicate their lives to caring for the sick. And finally, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we reaffirm our commitment to finding better treatments and ultimately a cure for breast cancer. Now, we all know that breast cancer has touched the lives of thousands of Portlanders, including my own. In the time I have served on this council, my own mother died of breast cancer. Without her, I would not be here today, and I miss her every day. And I am not alone. By the end of this year, more than 280,000 women in the United States are likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer. And by the end of this year, more than 42,000 women in the United States are likely to die from this disease. However, there is some good news. 90% of women diagnosed with breast cancer today will survive for the next 5 years. But the key to survival is early detection. Regular breast cancer screenings are the most reliable way to detect breast cancer early. which is one of the reasons why this Breast Cancer Awareness Month is more important than ever. The COVID pandemic has disrupted many parts of our lives, including our relationship to the healthcare system. Over the past year and a half, many of us have missed doctor's appointments, including breast cancer screenings. So one of the sad side effects of COVID is likely to be an increase in undetected breast cancer. That's why I'd like to take this moment to urge the women of Portland to schedule their next breast cancer screening. And that's why I encourage citizens, government agencies, private businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other interested groups to engage in the activities that increase awareness of what we can do to prevent, treat, and find a cure for breast cancer. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for bringing this proclamation forward, and to the organization Pink Lemonade Project for your advocacy. Thank you, Mayor Stos and Susan Stearns for your words today, and also to Commissioner Mapps for sharing your own personal story as well. It makes it very personal to all of us, and we've all, in one way or another, been touched. One of the many adverse effects, as Commissioner Mapps mentioned, is the pandemic, and adverse effects and about how many individuals have been delayed their preventative health appointments, including their routine mammograms. And this is really alarming. But proclamations like these raise this important awareness about the challenges, but also about just the reminder to watch out for one another. And it reminds us also about the spirit of hope and resiliency that resides in these communities that are both battling this disease, as well as the family and friends who love and support them as well. So I'm appreciative for the advocacy and public health workers who are highly attuned to this during this time and working on behalf of those affected by breast cancer. You remind us that awareness and action starts with us. We are not immune, and we need to pay attention and take notice. So thank you for your work, and the reminder to check ourselves and also with our own friends and loved ones to encourage regular mammograms.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and colleagues. Thank you so much for your remarks today, and especially hearing from you, Commissioner Mapps, and my condolences as your dear mother did pass away this past year. Mayor Wheeler, it's very important that you did bring this proclamation forward. And it's great to see you again, Mayor Stearns. I actually think I saw you last year at this time. And it's great to have Ridgefield in the house, home of the Sputters. I just had to say that because I think it's like the best mascot in the Northwest. And to you, Dawn Stiles, for your leadership and consistency as well. You know, I think all of us know a year doesn't go by that there's not someone that we love that's not impacted and affected by breast cancer. And as our colleagues said, the research is just so sound. It's about early screening, can detect it sooner, and when it's treatable. I appreciate what Commissioner Rubio had to say about it's yet another reason why we must keep COVID numbers down. So important life-saving preventions, such as screening, can remain robust. It's just a reminder that we're all in this together, no matter where we get our information. Public health is about going well beyond yourself and caring about the community. So thanks again for bringing this to our attention. I know I go to a lot of sporting events where you see a lot of pink, and so I'm reminded about it this past month. But most importantly, it's important that we bring it here to the dais and take a moment to acknowledge the importance of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you, colleagues, for this important proclamation.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Rubio, is your hand still just residual from before? Great. Okay, terrific. So colleagues, it's my honor as mayor to read this proclamation on behalf of all of us. And as Commissioner Mapps just reminded us, and as our presenters reminded us, this is an issue that has the potential to touch each and every one of us. And so it's such an important issue, and I really appreciate your all being here today to honor this moment. Whereas October is nationally recognized as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to raise awareness using pink ribbon imagery, which aims to offer support for those courageously battling this disease, to recognize the many survivors, their supporters and loved ones, and to honor those lives lost to this disease. And whereas in the Pacific Northwest, 1 in 7 women are affected by breast cancer, while the national average is 1 in 8 women. Breast cancer also affects men. New breast cancer diagnoses occur over 2 times more frequently than diagnoses of the second leading cancer. And breast cancer is the second most likely cause of death for women in the United States. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic impacted progress made in cancer treatment by creating a dramatic drop in mammograms during the spring of 2020, which led to later stage diagnoses, more aggressive treatments, and ultimately more breast cancer related deaths. And whereas the closure of the Susan G. Komen Oregon Southwest Washington affiliate in March 2021 created new gaps of programs and services to critical segments of breast cancer patients, like those with metastatic breast cancer, those with geographic barriers to care, and others affected by the social determinants of health. And whereas Pink Lemonade Project, a Washington-based nonprofit organization, has the mission to, quote, educate, empower, and support those affected by breast cancer, unquote, and is committed to working to address these gaps and aims to bring attention to both this important community health issue and to the disparities of women and people of color who are affected by this disease. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite the community and spread the important message of early detection, screening, and prevention to women and men in order to prevent additional diagnoses or even breast cancer deaths. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim October to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month. Thank you all for being here and sharing this. Commissioner Ryan, did you have a follow-up comment?
No, I just forgot to put my hand down. Sorry.
No worries. All right. Thank you for Dawn and Susan. Thank you for your testimony, and thank you, colleagues, for your thoughtful words on this. Especially Commissioner Mapps, thank you. And this is a time for all of us to remember your mom and the so many others who've been taken by this disease. And the work we're doing here will hopefully ensure that future generations won't have to fight this way, that we'll see a reduction in breast cancer. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is another time certain item. This is item 769, please.
Proclaim October 2021 to be Filipino American History Month.
Commissioner Mapps.
Mr. Mayor, colleagues, I'm delighted to join you in proclaiming October 2021 to be Filipino American History Month here in Portland. Filipino Americans are an essential part of Portland's culture, economy, and history. And Filipino American History Month is about celebrating that. Filipino American History Month is celebrated in October to commemorate October 18th, 1587. That's the day when the first Filipinos arrived in North America in a place now known as Morro Bay, California. October 18th, 1587 is also a reminder that the history between the Philippines and these United States is long, complicated, occasionally tragic, and often triumphant. For example, the first permanent Filipino settlement in what we now know as the United States was founded in 1763 in St. Malo Parish, Louisiana. And in 1898, the United States purchased the Philippines from Spain for $20 million. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the very next year, 1899, the Filipino people launched an insurrection against their American landlords. That conflict is known as the Philippine American War. It lasted 3 years. Over 4,200 Americans and over 20,000 Filipino combatants died in that conflict. In addition, more than 200,000 Filipino civilians perished in that war. From 1898 to 1946, the Philippines essentially existed as a colony of the United States. Here in Oregon, the first large wave of Filipinos arrived in the Portland metropolitan area in the early 1900s. This first wave of Filipino immigrants largely consisted of two groups, farmers and students. In the early 1900s, Filipino farm workers made their way to Oregon after working on farms in California and Washington, fish canneries in Alaska, and pineapple and sugar plantations in Hawaii. At the same time, beginning in 1903, the US territorial government in the Philippines started sponsoring Filipino students to study in these United States, including here in Oregon. This program brought many Filipino students to the University of Oregon and to Oregon State University. Today, more than 4.2 million Filipino Americans live in these United States, and about 42,000 Filipinos live in the Portland metro area. And now to tell us more about the Filipino American experience here in Portland and here in the United States, we have several guests. I'd like to welcome Tabitha Ponce-Nauno with the Malaya Movement PDX. I'd like to welcome Freddie Guerrero, the community organizer with Migrante Portland. And I'd like to welcome Rosalia Delano, Executive Director of the Foundation for Philippine Progress Incorporated. And finally, we have Jan Mason, President of the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much, Commissioner Maps and Mayor Wheeler and all the other commissioners here today. Magandang umaga. Good morning. My name is Tabitha Ponciano, and I'm a member of Malaya Movement Portland, an organization fighting for human rights, democracy, sovereignty in the Philippines. Founded in a time of increasing fascist violence under President Duterte. Thank you all for celebrating Filipino American History Month and inviting the community here for this proclamation. I think of Portland as my second home, having lived here as long as I lived in the Philippines. I immigrated to the United States as a teenager and moved to Portland 10 years ago for college at Lewis and Clark. For years, I didn't understand or know about the deep historical connections this city and this state has with my homeland. It was only through community organizing that I learned about that history. And as we celebrate Filipino American History Month, I hope that more people become more aware of these connections. The US's history is deeply entangled with the Philippines, and that continues today, with millions of tax dollars funding the Duterte regime as it wreaks havoc on the Filipino people. I am proud to say, however, that in early 2020, the Portland Human Rights Commission passed a resolution condemning the human rights violations in the Philippines. This year, our very own Oregon representatives, Representative Bonamici and Representative Blumenauer, have signed on to an important piece of legislation called the Philippine Human Rights Act, calling for the suspension of US military aid to the Duterte regime. These are critical steps towards creating a new history, but we must also look back at Oregon's past with the Philippines. The Soldiers Monument and the Fountain for Company H in Lonsdale Square in downtown honors Oregon soldiers sent to fight wars in the Philippines, first against the Spanish and then against my own people, as mentioned by Commissioner Maps. As we fought for independence from our colonizers, hundreds of thousands of Filipinos were subjected to torture, displacement, and ultimately death. In the proclamation, it highlights the mutual defense treaty between the Philippines and the United States, a celebration of this long-standing partnership. It is complex, however, like Commissioner Maps mentioned. What we must reckon with, though, is that the US has been using the Philippines as a launching pad for its military aggression for decades, rendering mutual defense as an unequal relationship in so many ways. But Filipino American history to me is one of resistance. It is one of bloodshed that is met with determination to continue to fight for genuine democracy and human rights, not just for Filipinos in the Philippines, but for Filipino Americans in the US as well. Our contributions to this country are great, and I appreciate the recognition of that here. This Filipino American History Month, I'm asking Portland, its City Council, and those in the space with us to commit to writing a new history of solidarity between our city and the Philippines. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Commissioner Mapps, does that complete the presentation? No, I'm seeing Tabitha saying no. Good. Okay.
No, yeah. Thank you. I think we have 3 more speakers today.
Yes.
All right, I'll wait for you to tell me when to turn it over.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead. Maraming salamat for celebrating Filipino American History Month. My name is Freddy Guerrero, and I am a community organizer with Migrante Portland, an organization fighting for the rights and welfare of Filipino migrant workers and for genuine democracy in the Philippines. I immigrated to the US when I was 7 years old, and growing up, I always wondered why we had to leave the Philippines. My mom's answer was always, for a better life. I didn't really understand what that meant as a child. It wasn't until after college from the University of Portland in 2016 that I learned more about the history of my homeland and the true conditions that forced Filipinos to leave the country every day. These conditions include lack of national industrialization, lack of jobs, landlessness, and government corruption. Instead of finding real solutions to these conditions, President Marcos in the 70s created the labor export program that encouraged more Filipinos to go abroad to work, and through their remittances, they could provide livelihood for their families and help the economy of the Philippines. Today, the labor export program remains under the Duterte administration 40 years later. Here in Oregon, overseas Filipino workers or OFWs are working as caregivers, CNAs, nurses, cashiers at grocery stores, post office workers, housekeepers, warehouse workers, and others. They are frontline workers. The majority of them are overworked and underpaid for what they do, and still they continue to work hard because their families in the Philippines need them. OFWs are considered as modern-day heroes by the Philippine government, and yet when they need support from the Philippine consulate, they are not easy to access. The recent Oregon consular outreach in September left 400 plus overseas Filipinos frustrated because they were not able to renew their passports, apply for dual citizenship, or register to vote. Many Filipino Oregonians were not aware that the consular outreach was happening. Many tried to make an appointment and were not able to, and many waited on the waiting list for a day or two and still were not able to avail the services they needed. Additionally, there are still many of our kababayan and their families who did not receive financial assistance promised by the Philippine government at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. After talking with some OFWs living in Portland, I learned why their families in the Philippines didn't receive assistance. It's because they have families working abroad. We can see here that the government continues to rely on the remittances of OFWs. Forced migration and the almost 4 decades of labor export program is a big reason why we have Filipino American History Month. It is so important that we pay attention to the root of Filipino migration, as it is part of the history of all of us living in Oregon. Thank you for having us here.
Good morning. I'll go next. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, commissioners, and community members. Thank you, Tabitha and Freddie, for such important words. My name is Rosela De Leon, Founding Executive Director of Foundation for Philippine Progress, and I'm honored and humbled to provide a testimony for today's proclamation. A little more than 3 years ago, in October 2018, during the Filipino American History Month, we launched the Foundation for Philippine Progress. My personal story of growing up in the Philippines as a grandchild of a fisherman and a market vendor, and later as an immigrant based in Portland, led to all these. During a disaster relief mission in the Philippines, I met a kid named TJ. He told me that he used to look up to the sky at nights where the moon was full and the stars were shining, And from there, he dreamed that the moon was a big, fluffy, round bread, and the scattered stars were little grains of rice that were going to come down from the sky for the hungriest people waiting for food. Unfortunately, this continues to be the story of the people in my hometown. So now, on the 3rd-year anniversary of our nonprofit organization, I am both proud and humbled by the significant impacts made by our small organization, but with big dreams. Today, we engage in disaster and relief and medical missions to the Philippines. We give seeds for sustainable livelihood, and we lend a helping hand to underserved families. Here in Portland, we engage in culture and arts programs like providing regular Filipino language classes, hosting educational discussions, and through the program we're running now, which is the Filipino Eats Week, where we engage Portland in a conversation, not just about the taste of Filipino food, but the ways in which it transcends time and location, connecting Filipinos across the diaspora through the taste of home. Filipino American history is a history of hardships and tragedy, and it is also a history of continued struggle for freedom, for liberation, and for basic human rights. There is no Filipino American History Month without the 6,000 Filipinos who leave the Philippines every day in search of a better life. And we invite all of you to learn these stories firsthand from Filipinos living in Portland and from organizations like us who are here today. My hope is that as you continue to learn our history, that more will honor and adopt the spirit of community service with a justice and equity lens and our organization's vision of a full life for every Filipino. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Magandang umaga sa lahat. Thank you, Commissioner Mapps, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Rubio, and Commissioner Ryan. Thank you for this opportunity and for the proclamation. My name is Janice Mason. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the president of one of the minority chambers in our community, the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce. We were established in 1996, and we celebrate 25 years in the community, making a difference in Portland and beyond. As many of you have heard, the history of Philippines is complex as Filipino Americans. However, we have a spirit of resiliency. We have a tenacity that is a hallmark of our Filipino Americans. At PACO, we build a welcoming and inclusive community organized to promote economic empowerment for every Filipino business owner and our allies, including businesses owned by Native, Indigenous, Latino, Hispanic, Black, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and all people marginalized who have been disproportionately impacted. This spirit of resiliency has helped us through the pandemic. PACO, as an organization, has stepped up and raised our voice, particularly in exposing economic disparities impacting our community. Our organization has worked hard to deliver programs that reach our Black and Brown community of entrepreneurs, founders, and business owners. Despite the challenges brought on by Asian hate and violence, the coronavirus pandemic, and the daily stresses of our new normal, PACO continues to step up and learn and lean in to crucial conversations with elected officials, government staff, and help to guide policy and investment in our community equitably. Many have not made it through the pandemic, and many more will shut down if we don't address the root causes of the inequities of economic policies. Nevertheless, we have some moments of celebration that we appreciate that we've experienced during the last 20 months and have made significant progress. In collaboration with the City of Portland through Prosper Portland, we were able to participate in the Small Business Relief Block Grant Fund and disseminated together with the Black American Chamber $176,000 to small businesses in need during the pandemic. With Multnomah County, we also dispersed more than $375,000 to small businesses. We dispersed or distributed to over 196 small businesses in the community, personal protective equipment. We continue to work with Prosper Portland. We work with Business Oregon in providing technical assistance to small businesses and helping them find resources and build a community and grow their small businesses. We appreciate what we have done, but we know that our work is not complete. There is much more ahead for growth and development of our economy to lead for more individuals to have wealth mobility, including in our Filipino American community. Using our resiliency, our spirit of resiliency and our lessons learned, we hope to continue to this. We encourage you to support small businesses and businesses throughout the city that reflect our culture. As was shared by other speakers, there are numerous Filipino restaurants, offices, bakeries, and we are in so many other professions, including frontline healthcare workers. I want to thank all of the mayor and all of the speakers and for this invitation. It's my privilege to speak on behalf of PACO and fighting for economic empowerment. Without social justice, we cannot achieve economic justice. And I agree that wholeheartedly and appreciate all that was said today and appreciate also the city supporting this proclamation. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Mapps.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, before you read the proclamation, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some of the people who helped make today possible. In particular, I'd like to recognize the Filipino American Citizens Employee Affinity Group who helped organize today's presentation. And I'd like to share a story about a local Filipino restaurant, Fork and Spoon, which sits at about 106th and Sandy. I want to share this story because it's a uniquely Portland story, and I think it's also a uniquely American story, and it also explains sort of where this proclamation comes from and why we do things like this. Let's see. Fork and Spoon is an excellent Filipino restaurant run by a Filipino American family, which occupies the same space that used to be Old Country Sausage. Some of you might remember Old Country Sausage. Of course, it was a beloved neighborhood deli run by German American immigrants. A few years back, the family that ran Old Country Sausage moved to Idaho, where they opened a new German-style deli, also called Old Country Sausage. I'm delighted to report that Old Country Sausage appears to be thriving in Idaho. Now, when Old Country Sausage moved out of their space, Fork and Spoon moved in. Fork and Spoon is owned and operated by Erwina Barney, who used to run Erwina's Filipino barbecue food cart. And Fork and Spoon not only fills the same physical space as Old Country Sausage, I believe it also occupies the same psychic and spiritual and cultural space as Old Country Sausage. They've become beloved neighbors, a great business, and an important local institution in the Park Rose neighborhood. Now, that evolution of Old Country Sausage from that Old Country Sausage space from a beloved German deli to a beloved Filipino restaurant reflects the evolution of the Park Rose neighborhood. It is also a uniquely Portland story and a uniquely American story. And that is what this proclamation celebrates. So I just want to thank everyone who made this proclamation possible. Thank you very much, and I'll turn the floor over to my colleague, Commissioner Rubio.
Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps, and thank you, Mayor Wheeler. First off, I just want to thank the Filipino American City Employee Affinity Group. for dedicating this personal time to bring this forward. And also Commissioner Mapps, thank you for your leadership here. I'm glad that we were joined by community leaders here as well that have presented more context and history and experience and knowledge to this recognition. There's a long history, as you all talked about, of entrepreneurship and advocacy and culture and arts by Filipino Americans who've helped shape our country's economy and cultures immeasurably, but not only in the country, here in Portland and Oregon, as you also acknowledged. And so it's only right that we're acknowledging and honoring your contributions today. And just 3 weeks ago, we proclaimed Indigenous Peoples Day and reflected on the extensive intergenerational damage and trauma done by colonialism and injustice. And today's proclamation and the broader history of your community also reminds us again just how dangerous that ideology was and still is, and that we need to continue to do things to dismantle and fight it in our daily lives. And more importantly, they also remind us about the community's long history of resilience in the face of all this. And that resilience is still very present today. And we heard a lot about that and saw a lot about that in your testimony. I also want to take a moment just to uplift and appreciate the roots that this recognition also has with migrant farm workers. Decades ago, Filipino community and undocumented migrants, particularly in the Latinx community, stood alongside each other when no one else would. And this side of the migrant farm worker movement is rarely told, but it's something that is deeply held. And I'm glad that after generations, that bond built between our communities stays strong and has expanded to build on strong alliances with other Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities and frontline communities. So just thank you again for all of your leadership and for lifting up our history and reminding us that the work and advocacy continues, and that we as a city have a role in dismantling these old systems of oppression and charting a new history together, rooted in justice and freedom. Thanks.
Commissioner Ryan.
Sure, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for supporting this important proclamation. It was inspiring to just listen to Commissioner Rubio and Professor Mapps. I mean, Commissioner Mapps, your factual history is so refreshing. You really dug in, and it was important to listen to. And also the community leaders, your words were so powerful, and I hear you and I believe you. I remember back when I was the CEO of All Hands Raised, and we led advocacy effort to get school districts in Multnomah County to decouple their demographic data for students from Philippines and the Pacific Islands, separating and disaggregating that from the regular Asian category, if you will. And when we looked at that data and we disaggregated it with the real disparities that were impacting the Filipino and Pacific Islander community experience were very alarming to many of the educators. There was some pretty extreme disparities that were being lost when it was clumped together with the rest of the data. Also, I just have to add that on a personal level, thank goodness my brother married Lori over 40 years ago. Lori is Hawaiian and Filipino heritage. Besides our family gatherings, having much, much better food, it's just been a blessing to have the integration of that culture into our family. And I'm proud now to be a great uncle to my nephew, Keani and Kaylani's, both of their children. There's now 4. It's so important that we as a city support this proclamation commemorating the rich heritage and cultural achievements of the Filipino American community. And again, thank you all my colleagues and city staff for supporting this proclamation.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, and to all my colleagues. Before I read the proclamation, I just want to acknowledge the work that was put into creating it. I want to especially thank the Filipino American City Employees Affinity Group. And I particularly want to recognize the work of our guests, Tabitha, Freddie, Roselle, and Jan, for their contributions to this. Commissioner Mapps, as always, thank you for your leadership. And I always appreciate your detailed notes around proclamations. I always enjoy hearing the history and some of the background and context, and you're exceptionally gifted at that. And so I want to acknowledge that as well. And now on with the proclamation. I read this on behalf of all of us. Whereas October 2021 is the 434th anniversary of the earliest documented proof of Filipino presence on the shores of the west coast of the unceded land now referred to as the continental United States. And whereas Filipinos make up one of the largest ethnic groups in the United States, with over 23,000 residing in the Portland metro region. And whereas the people of Oregon should be informed of the positive impact that Filipino Americans have had on our communities. And whereas in Oregon, thousands of Filipino Americans have made contributions to the fields of teaching, business, government service, agriculture, ministry, medicine, and other sciences, humanities, and the United States Armed Forces. And whereas August 30, 2021 was the 70th anniversary of the Mutual Defense Treaty between the United States and the Philippines, making it one of the world's longest standing mutual defense treaties. And whereas across the country, Filipino American frontline workers in the healthcare industry have worked tirelessly during a pandemic, accounting for 4% of the registered nurses nationwide, but 25% of the nurses who died during this pandemic. And whereas a painful history of occupation, war, and global trade in the Philippines have resulted in a blended culture and unique identity, Asian, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, and beyond. And whereas efforts must continue to promote the study of Filipino American history and culture, because the role of the Filipino Americans, like other people of color, continues to be overlooked in the writing, teaching, and learning of United States history. And whereas this anniversary, originating in 1988, is a significant time to celebrate the advancement and contributions of Filipino Americans, a time of remembrance, reflection, and recognition, and a relevant time for our community to learn more about Filipino Americans and their part in shaping our nation and Oregon's history. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim October to be Filipino American History Month in Portland, and encourage all Portlanders to join in the recognition of the positive impact Filipino Americans have had on our community during this time. Thank you all very much for your efforts today. We appreciate it. And Keelan, I believe we now go to our one item on the regular agenda today, and that is item 776.
Proclaim October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness.
One moment. All right, very good. Colleagues, we are here today to support domestic violence victims and survivors in Portland, as well as all across the country. In just a minute, I'll ask my colleagues if they'd like to make any comments before I read the proclamation. But first, I want to thank Commissioner Hardesty for co-introducing this proclamation. I also want to give a heartfelt thanks to the individuals who helped with drafting and editing this proclamation. Director of the Gateway Center, Martha Strawn Morris, Alex Sanchez in the Domestic and Sexual Violence Coordination Office for Multnomah County, and Kristen Johnson in Commissioner Hardesty's office. Thank you for your dedication to and advocacy for domestic violence awareness in our community. I also want to highlight that with stay-at-home orders at the beginning of the pandemic last year, many communities saw a huge spike in domestic violence-related calls for support. The City of Portland is committed to supporting increased prevention efforts and committed to supporting survivors of domestic violence. Again, I want to express my thanks to the Gateway Center for the tremendous impact that you're having in our community. Colleagues, do you have any additional comments before I read the proclamation? Commissioner Mapps.
Mr. Mayor, I do have some comments and thoughts that I would like to share. First off, I am glad to join with you in proclaiming October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in Portland. during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we come together as a city to reaffirm our commitment to ending domestic violence and supporting survivors. We honor the advocates and service providers who support survivors. This month, we celebrate our community's progress in combating domestic violence, and we rededicate ourselves to creating a society where domestic violence is not tolerated. Now, colleagues, as the commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, I also have the sad duty to report to you that in the last 2 years, our 911 operators have seen a dramatic increase in domestic violence calls. From 2019 to 2020, domestic violence calls in Portland to Portland's 911 system increased by 55%. And from 2020 to today, domestic violence calls increased an additional 50%. In other words, over the past 2 years, domestic violence in Portland has more than doubled. These statistics should be a call to action. The city of Portland must work to ensure that survivors and their families have access to the resources, care, and support they need. The city should hold offenders accountable for their crimes, and we must work to stop violence before it starts. And our programming should recognize that women of color, individuals with disabilities, members of the LGBTQIA+ community, immigrants, and older adults are disproportionately impacted by domestic violence. Colleagues, for these reasons and more, I'm glad to join with you in declaring October to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in Portland, Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor, and also thanks to Commissioner Hardesty to both of you for bringing this proclamation forward. This issue is personal to me for so many reasons that touch our friends, family, and community. And for this reason, I wanted just to acknowledge the courage and hope and resilience of people currently experiencing domestic violence and those whom are survivors. We see you and you matter and your stories matter, and we honor all the stories told and untold today. I want to extend an enormous thank you to also the many organizations in our community that are currently working to support families and individuals in their healing and recovery, as well as preventing domestic violence from happening, including the Gateway Center, El Programa Hispano Católico, Bradley Engel, Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, ERCO, Impact Northwest, SCI, YWCA, Raphael House, and many others. In times like these, it's even more critical to support these organizations, especially those that are using a culturally responsive lens with the expertise that they do have to do what they do best, providing the safety and lifeline to so many in crisis, and especially in the midst of a worldwide health crisis. So again, just thanks again for bringing this important awareness forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and also Commissioner Hardesty for bringing this proclamation forward. With personal movement limited and people confined to their homes, domestic and intimate partner violence during COVID-19 has operated quietly as a pandemic within a pandemic. You really get this information, especially from school districts. In February, UC Davis published a research which suggested that COVID-19 isolation is linked to an increase in domestic violence. In Portland, incidents of domestic violence have risen dramatically, especially with those from marginalized and intersectional identities. This proclamation, which recognizes and honors all the organizations and groups that are committed to addressing, preventing, and healing from domestic violence, could not be timelier. I join all of you on this council in proclaiming this important proclamation forward and proclaim October to be Domestic Violence Month. Thank you for bringing this forward again.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And it is now my honor to read this on behalf of the entire City Council. Whereas domestic violence is a crime that touches the lives of Portlanders of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children, especially those with marginalized and intersectional identities. And whereas reported incidents of domestic violence in Portland have risen dramatically over the course of the pandemic, and whereas domestic violence is a leading cause of homelessness among families in the United States and is a significant contributing factor to unemployment and poverty. Nearly 8 million days of paid work each year is lost due to domestic violence issues, the equivalent of more than 32,000 full-time jobs. And whereas Portland has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to addressing this problem in partnership with Multnomah County, the District Attorney's Office, and community providers. And whereas 11 years ago, the City of Portland, in cooperation with Multnomah County, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, the Multnomah County Circuit Court, and community partners opened the area's first one-stop center for domestic violence survivors, the Gateway Center for Domestic Violence Services. And whereas children who are exposed to domestic violence experience higher levels of adult depression and trauma symptoms and are much more likely than children not exposed to violence to use and or tolerate violence in their adult relationships. And whereas, despite this commitment, far too many people, families, and children in our communities are affected by domestic violence. And whereas, the City of Portland recognizes and thanks all of the organizations and groups that are committed to addressing, preventing, and healing from domestic violence, often working directly with survivors to ensure that they have access to employment opportunities, housing, legal resources, as well as many other services. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim October 2021 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Portland and encourage all residents to observe this month by gaining awareness of these issues and supporting organizations that work to address, prevent, help, and heal those affected by domestic violence. Thank you, everyone. Commissioner Hardesty could not make it today, but I also want to acknowledge her leadership on this issue as well and thank her. Thank you, colleagues. I believe, Keelan, that completes our business for this morning. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you later. We are adjourned.